Greetings and welcome to Unit 6 of our unit on ancient Rome and the origins of Christianity. This unit will be talking about ancient Rome, which started or the power of ancient Rome, which started right after the fall of ancient Greece. So while we go through this unit, make sure you have your Lecture 1 worksheet available. And if you have any questions, as usual, please let Mr. Vincent know and we'll clear those up right away for you. So let's get started. So, setting the stage. With the defeat of the Persians by Alexander and the eventual decline of the Greek civilization, power would eventually shift west towards the Italian peninsula. The Romans would build an amazing empire filled with many different cultures and help spawn a brand new religion, Christianity. So we're taking place after Alexander has conquered Persia, and after his death, obviously. We'll talk briefly about that in a minute, but main part you need to know is first we had Greece, which is where we left off with our last unit. After the fall of Greece and the Hellenistic culture, we now see Rome starting to take a more influential role in the Mediterranean region. So, we have the origins of Rome. Legend says that twins Romulus and Remus were abandoned on the Tiber River and raised by a she-wolf. What's mentioned in the book, if you read it also, that Romulus and Remus were the sons of the Roman god Mars and a princess. You'll remember from Greece on how they had their their Greek gods. Well, Rome also had their mythological gods as well. And of that obviously was Mars, Uranus, several others, usually related to astrological objects like planets and stuff. But these two, according to myth, were the sons of Mars. Mars supposedly left them abandoned near the Tiber River, and a she-wolf raised them, as the story goes. Later, the two boys decided to build a city. However, they couldn't agree on certain things, and eventually Romulus kills Remus, and the city of Rome is named after Romulus. Moving on. The geography. Rome was built on the 7 rolling hills of the Tiber River. These are rolling hills. Agriculture is possible, obviously not as good as if it was flat land, but as time went on, Rome tended to rely mostly on trade and not so much agriculture around the city. They would have some farming and stuff outside of the city, but the majority of it was eventually done with trade as time went on. Rome obviously is located on the Italian peninsula, which is present-day Italy, bordered by the Adriatic Sea to the east, and is near the midpoint of the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean climate, it's warm year-round, which encouraged outdoor activity. The main thing to know about the geography of the Rome is that because it is near the center of what the Mediterranean Sea would be, this makes it a great place for trade. It's the shortest distance, or the most central place for everybody to meet to do trade, which makes it a great location for the exchange of goods and ideas. So, let's talk a little bit about the history. The first Romans settled on the Italian peninsula around 1000 to 500 BC. Of these, the first group were the Latins. The Latins built their settlement of wooden huts. Not a lot of high technology there, but it worked. And they are considered the first Romans of the 3 we're going to talk about. They did help spread Latin-derived languages to the area. Even today, a lot of the words we use in the English language come from Latin words that are from this particular culture. The next group of people were the Greeks. Shortly after the Hellenistic culture, they moved north into Italy during the decline of the Hellenistic culture. They also settled in southern Italy and Sicily. They brought all of Italy, including Rome, into contact with Greek civilization. This included bringing them architecture, democracy, and philosophy. We can see a lot of architecture that is similar from Greece and Rome. An example is a lot of their buildings using similar types of pylons that relate to each other. If you also recall, Greece a lot of the times was a democracy, or certain parts of Greece, and that transferred over again into Rome, which eventually became a republic, which we'll talk about later. And the third group was the Etruscans. These guys were really skilled metal workers and native to northern Italy. They had a very strong influence on Roman civilization. A lot of stuff that they did was acclimated to the rest of Rome as it evolved. They also influenced the Roman arch. If you recall from the video that we watched, the arch being the round entryway that allowed them to build their buildings or their other structures using arches instead of solid walls. This saved on materials, time, but was still a very strong use of the building materials. Additionally, the Etruscans influenced Rome's lust for killing. The Etruscans were very much into death and dying and battles, and this is where a lot of their love for that came from, was from this particular group of people. And here we see just a simple map of really old ancient Roman area around 270 BC. Obviously, you can see some of the regions here. Originally, the Etruscans were up here and along the coastline up there. Down to the south in orange, you see a lot of the Carthaginians, or people of Carthage, which is right here, and all the empire that Carthage owned. This will change, obviously, later on when we get to some wars we'll talk about, but you kind of get the idea. All right. So, early Rome. Early Etruscan kings and successors built temples and public centers in Rome. The Forum was at the heart of the Roman political life. We'll see pictures of that in a moment, but the thing you need to consider the Forum, it's kind of like a downtown area. It's where everybody would go to conduct business, to do trade, or purchase items, but it was also the heart of the political life. A lot of the political buildings were down there as well, where they would have their debates and the government functioned. So again, I consider it kind of like a downtown area of the city. It was the main part of the city where people would go daily to do whatever business they needed to do. After Rome's last king was driven from power in 509 BC for being too harsh, the Romans declared they would never again be ruled by a king. They realized that having a king was hard for them. They did not like having one person having all power. So instead, they established a republic, which meant public affairs. A republic is a form of government in which power rests with the citizens who have the right to vote for their leaders. However, not everybody had the right to vote. In Rome, citizenship with voting rights was granted only to free-born male citizens. Women were not allowed to vote, slaves were not allowed to vote, obviously, and in some rare cases, if Rome had conquered your territory, you'd be given citizenship. You might be given the chance to vote, but depends on the city you were in and how far away you were from the central city of Rome. We'll talk more about that later, the difference between citizen and allies. So keep that in your mind. Here's a picture or a diagram of what the Roman Forum once looked like. Here you've got one of the main government buildings right there. You've got this walkway or this park area here, the type of mall, I guess you could call it, as well as some shops along the edges here, and obviously the front entrance to the bottom. This is what it would have looked like way back in the day, about 2,000 years ago. Now, however, this is what's left of it. Here we still have the mall area, the public area which people are walking through. These are just tourists down here. And this here would be that main government building, we believe, that existed back then where all the debates and the decisions were made. As you can see, these were some massive buildings, and considering these were built more than 2,000 years ago without any type of machinery, this is a very impressive feat. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the Romans in particular. They were amazing at architects, and they were amazing at coming up with different ways to build things despite their lack of what we would call heavy machinery today. So let's talk about the people. Rome was divided into several different groups who struggled for power. The two main groups are the patricians, which were wealthy landowners who held most of the power, and the plebeians, who were the common farmers, artisans, merchants, and were also the majority of the population. A third group, as the picture shows, are slaves. Slaves obviously were not considered citizens. They had no voting rights. They basically had no power at all. A lot of times you were born into slavery, or sometimes when Rome would conquer you and you were a soldier, they might take you in as a slave, even though you used to be a soldier. But slaves, you were born into slavery usually, or you were defeated and told you had to be a slave. That was rarity, typically. Most of the time, when Rome would conquer a city, they would just take its people, and its people would become part of the Roman Empire. You had to be doing something really bad to be put as a slave. So it wasn't all that normal for a conquering city to put them all in slaves. That just didn't happen. On to the government. Tribunes were elected representatives who protected the rights of the plebeians from the patrician officials. Originally, they decided, it was figured out that there were a lot of rich guys, a lot of patrician officials. Sorry, these guys were really rich. However, it was the plebeians that there were more of, the regular everyday people, the plebeians. Because there were more plebeians than there were patricians, the patricians realized they had to give up some of their power, their governmental power, to the plebeians. And we'll see how that looks on a chart in a minute.